Yes, I can see you.
Sorry, I hope you are hearing me also now.
Yes, now we can hear you and see you as well.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thank
much.
you, Professor Selim, for inviting me and share my thoughts on this important issue.
And of course, and we are
Thank you,
sincerely
Surit,
grateful.
for facilitating all this.
So thank you so much. So I think it's our pleasure to actually invite Dr. Nityananda, who is the Director, Council for Social Development, New Delhi, India. And today he'll be talking about this session and the governance and BIMSTEC. So I request Takrim Shurit to introduce Dr. Nityananda, and then we'll actually listen from him.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. We are going to start our today's second session titled Governance and BIMSTEC, which will be conducted by Dr. Nityananda. Dr. Nityananda is an economist and public policy analyst with over 2 decades of experience in research, consulting, and teaching. His works focuses on the intersection of the economy, society, and the environment, particularly in the political economy and the legal aspect of these areas. His expertise span India, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Africa. Currently, Dr. Nityananda is the director of Council for Social Development at New Delhi, a leading research institute focused on the social development issues. Dr. Nando has worked on numerous research and consulting projects. He has contributed to policies for government bodies and the international organizations such as UNESCAP and World Bank. He holds a PhD degree from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Now I would like to request Dr. Nityananda to start his session. Over to you, Dr. Nanda.
Thank you, Surit, for that generous introduction. So the topic you have given me, can you see my screen?
Yes, probably you can use it in the slideshow mode. Yes, perfect.
Yeah. So governance and BIMSTEC, and this is not as simple as it may sound, because governance normally you understand mostly in the context of national level governance. You talk about democracy, rule of law, you talk about participation and judiciary, executive, legislation, all those things come. And then we also have governance in the context of global governance, where things are, of course, very different. We talk about members and their equal rights or absence of equal rights, treaty making, treaty implementation, whether there is any institutional mechanism for enforcing those treaties and not, those kind of things. But when it comes to regional governance, it's a very, very different ballgame. Here, of course, it is more aligned to what you see in the context of global governance, because here again it's a member-driven, unit or unit, geopolitical unit, if you may say. And here also again, rule making and how you enforce and how you ensure that all have equitable participation, small countries, big countries. There would be, of course, some dominance by virtue of having size and military might, and all would play out in terms of power dynamics. But nevertheless, one has to see that the participation is equitable in all processes. So these are the essential elements of governance. So a few key issues in regional governance, I thought it would be important to first, kind of give a bit brief idea. One is to understand that regionalization is a dynamic process. The way you start with, the objective you start with, that keep on changing. You don't start with a national constitution and which continues for as many years as the state might exist. Here, you start with an agreement some objectives, some principles, but they, keep on changing, to give you just an idea, as of now, the most important and powerful regional body, if you may say, is the European Union, which started with just 6 members. And it started as a very limited scope, what was known as European Coal and Steel Community. And it was essentially in the aftermath of Second World War, where people thought, fighting war needed, continued access to coal and steel, So from there it started. It started purely as a political security-centric issue. And today, they are very integrated, common market, common policy, and all kind of stuff. So you start with something, you end up, as completely different thing in over 50, 60, 70 years. So that's true for all regional entities. Okay. But it is not a federation, it is not a confederation, but it is still a geopolitical unit. So it's a very unique animal, if you want to say, that these regional bodies. It also involves multi-level and multi-dimensional governance, because these countries have to think about what will happen to their national rules and law, and if those countries are themselves federal, what will happen to the impact of these agreements at the subnational level, and also what will happen to their other commitments in other regional bodies, in global governance, global agreements. So you have to think about all those, and of course, multidimensional, because sometimes you start as multidimensional, you start with both security, political issues, as well as economic issues. Sometimes you start as security issues, you include everything. Sometimes you start with economy issue and then you bring everything under the sun. So, but this is, no matter how you start with, other issues will automatically come. To give an example, when SAARC started, it carefully thought about excluding bilateral issues, but still bilateral issues came. It was not addressed, but it created problems. It, as I said earlier, typically restricts ability of national government, yet the process is inherently less participative. At the national level, if you are a democratic nation, which all our countries technically are, constitution-wise are democratic countries. Bhutan is a monarchy, but still, democratic monarchy. Then you have participatory governance. But when you come to regional bodies, you are making rules, laws which are applicable to you. They will restrict your ability of governments, but still it is not really very, very participative. Sometimes some civil society organizations, they try to voice concerns of common people, but this is not necessarily a kind of participatory governance. So democratic deficit will always be there. And that often restricts low acceptance among people of what you are doing in regional bodies. I will come to that issue later as well. Then, of course, managing power dynamics and political tension among members. No matter, even if you write no bilateral issues would be discussed, they will come up and they will affect your process and progress and everything. How you manage that? How you ensure that dominant power does not become too dominant? How you ensure that small countries also are able to participate in a equitable manner? These are very important issues that has to be also taken into consideration. Establishing institutional procedures. Even in EU, when they said, they thought that there has to be on secretariat, and then there was competition among the member countries saying, the secretariat would be here, there, everybody started fighting. Fortunately, in BIMSTEC, for example, there was not much of problem, and Bangladesh was kind of very unanimously, the consensus was there that it has to be in Dhaka. Of course, Bangladesh is centrally located in the BIMSTEC region, that might have worked in his favor, but this is what we did. But this is only one part. There are other institutional procedural issues which create problem. Then, of course, differential needs in different areas of cooperation. BIMSTEC, for example, have taken a sector-driven approach, which was, you can see some reflection of ASEAN countries also. And then addressing the special needs of small and vulnerable countries. Do we have such, I may not have answers to all the issues, I'm raising, but these are important issues. That's why I'm raising this issue. Suppose there are smaller countries, vulnerable countries, they have limited resources, both human and technical, and to equitably participate, they have to understand very well what we are discussing at regional level. For example, WTO has its own capacity building program. Whether that is perfect or not, that's a debatable issue. There is something called special and differential treatment, which virtually now vanished, but still some remnants are there. So how do you ensure that these small and vulnerable countries can participate with full knowledge and understanding of what they are getting into, not at the time of signing agreement, but also as things unfold over the years and the processes and procedures and institutions are established. These are very important issues that need to be addressed. As you all know, it started of Bangkok Declaration. Initially, it was known as BIST-EC or BISTEC, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, Thailand Economic Cooperation. So, not 7 members as we see now. It had only 4 members. Then 1 member joined. Then 2 members again. 1 member joined the very same year within few months. 2 more members joined up, within 7 years. And in the first summit in Bangkok on July, it was renamed because the starting name was acronym, but then it's found that now acronym doesn't hold anymore. So they did some sort of imagination and put the acronym remained the same, and Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multi-Sectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation. This is how it expanded. But as you see, the progress has been very, very slow. And the secretariat was established in 2014, after the third BIMSTEC summit, and it was established in Dhaka. So it took 17 long years to get a secretariat established. So of course, you know that the governance has not been strong enough. Otherwise, you would not need so many years to even get the secretariat established. And that is not the end of it. I would say even the formation process did not finish with the establishment of the secretariat, because it's a sector-driven grouping. As I said, it did not start as economic integration or regional integration. It was sector-driven cooperation initiative. So initially focused on 6 sectors in 1997: trade, technology, energy, transport, tourism, fisheries. These were the 6 sectors it first started with. Then in 2008, it expanded to incorporate agriculture, public health, poverty alleviation, culture and people-to-people contact, environment and climate change, and counter-terrorism. The first time some security-related issue or politics-related issue got included. Earlier, it was mostly sectoral economic collaboration, and the NAM itself had economic cooperation. BIMSTEC it's not security or political, but economic. But then in 2008, we made a deviation and we got into political or security issue. And in 2021, sectors were reorganized and many subsectors were added. And then just like ASEAN approach, sectors and subsectors were allocated among the member states to kind of, countries were nominated as leaders of particular sectors and subsectors. So this is how it was distributed. Bangladesh Trade and Investment and Development, very, very important. I think the most important role Bangladesh was given, and also it is the secretariat and the center of the region. So Bangladesh got very important role in that regard, because in no matter which region you are talking about, in all regional bodies, willingly, the trade, investment, development, this has become the center, of focus. You might have many different issues. The trade has always got the focus. I will bring it to your attention again, how to, why and how it got into focus. Then environment and climate change. Bhutan was dominated, probably because its record in environmental protection is is possibly the best. It is small economy, but it might have some advantages. Population pressure is less, but still one should not discount the fact that it is a negative carbon economy. It's a very classic example of it's a negative carbon economy. So because of that, possibly the role was given to it. And then security, maybe because India is the most powerful country in the region, politically and military wise. So security, counterterrorism, international crime, these were given to India, but also disaster management and energy. Myanmar, agriculture and food security. I'm not sure why and how it was discussed, but yes, Myanmar still probably the most agrarian economy in all these regions. So that could be the region. People to people contact, and culture, tourism, poverty alleviations, forum of think tanks and media, so this could be due to their experience with SARC, and these problems are there in poverty alleviation. And Nepal has been kind of neutral country in some sense in many kind of occasions. Going to other countries often become difficult, especially in the SARC countries, but Nepal one could easily travel it to. Sri Lanka, science and technology innovation, and technology, health, human resource development. There must be reason, because although Sri Lanka is going to some economic and social challenges as of now, but in terms of human development, Sri Lanka had been the best country in this region. Their human development is good. They have made significant progress in health indicators and education indicators. So, and then Thailand, connectivity. Incidentally, Thailand did not get or did not take, I don't know, too many issues like other countries. They wanted to focus on connectivity. Sector-driven approach, as I said, yet it took 24 years to finalize the sectors and the allocation to member countries. So this to me is the completion of the formative stage. So now I will say, in any group, whether you talk about group of individuals or you talk about a group of, countries or group of any other entities, it usually it would go through a few phases, few stages before it can start performing. The first stage is, of course, forming, and it depends on it begins with trust and relationship building, and terms of reference being developed. So essentially, in the beginning phase, that is formative stage. So I say 24 years we took just to be in the formative, complete the formation process. Storming, after you got, there is no regional group or any other group that has not gone through this storming process, in the sense that controversial issues will come. There will be a lot of disagreements among the members of this group, and they will negotiate, they will give, they will take. This will often create a lot of exchanges. So this is, one has to keep in mind, part of the process. If you have not gone through it, you have not really reached anything anywhere substantial. after that, after you have done all these debate discussion, then you kind of get into more substantive agreements and rules. As I said, we of course have agreement, but they're very, skeletal. You have not expanded the rules and regulation and processes and institutional framework, implementation mechanism. This you have not possibly established. So these rules of business has to be established, which is part of norming. And once you have done all that, only then the results would likely to be shown up, and you will then consider to be performing. My question here is, has there been storming in BIMSTEC? As I understand, I did not see much of controversy around BIMSTEC, as if everything is hunky-dory. And if everything is hunky-dory, possibly you have not really tried to do achieve much. So even today, you ASEAN might appear that they're performing, but they all have gone through this storming phase, which is very, very important. But in BIMSTEC, we are still dealing with very, very basics, first agreement and then one FTA, and very basic FTA is not very ambitious, that kind of FTA. So we have not done storming, and because of that, we have not really even tried to get into, doing much as a regional body. Now, what could be the motivation for regional cooperation? Power dynamics. Often, power dynamics, is very, very important part as a motivation of, smaller countries taking more interest in having a regional grouping to checkmate the dominant power. And dominant power often gets uneasy. If I draw the reference of SARC, when this was proposed by the Bangladeshi president, I hear informally that there was some discussion in India that is it a case of smaller neighbors ganging up against India to put pressure and deal with India, which is a dominant power, right? Then it can be identity and ideology, which in this case, in my understanding, is not the case, because identity and ideology is not important part, because in BIMSTEC, SARC identity was one factor. It is for South Asian country, and there is something called South Asian identity. Whether you earlier used to say Indian subcontinent, Indian and all, in Europe, many Center for Indian Studies got renamed as Center for South Asian Studies. So, this is, but here there is no BIMSTEC identity as of now, because we have South Asian countries and we have Myanmar and Thailand, which were never really considered to be South Asian countries. So identity is not important. Ideology is definitely not. It used to be in the past when socialist countries would get together, capitalist countries, would get together. No, that's not the case. Internal and external threats. I don't know how important it is, but the very fact that we got security issues, terrorism issues, counterterrorism issues included. So this must have been one of the reasons for this. Domestic politics, in SARC, of course, then there are, arguments expressed that the then Bangladeshi president kind of tried to legitimize its own rule by kind of developing a South Asian image, and that was the motivation. Could be. I mean, these are difficult to say what is there in the mind of a leader, but it might be there. If so many academicians have talked about it, there might be some, and we have seen recently, Indian Prime Minister has on several occasions tried to, promote his leadership, and one of the claim was that, he has done so well in terms of managing foreign affairs and all. So it could be there in this case also, though it is not the current PM who initiated this process. But yes, maybe in that time also it was there. Current PM might be articulating, the then PM might not be articulating. So whatever be the process. Then, of course, economic motivation, expanding trade and investment opportunities. This must have been, one important issue here, because after all, it is economic cooperation, providing impetus to domestic reforms. This is always a question mark, because some experts in many countries say that there is a concept of block-in, because there are domestic constituencies who are always against reform. So if you kind of lock in into some international agreement, it becomes easier for you to get the reforms agenda pushed through. Coping with negative impacts of globalization is very difficult in this context. Countering regional integration in other parts of the world, this has been in the discourse in the region itself. So this might have been an important factor. Because in SAARC context, we heard many times that other regions are integrating and they're benefiting out of it, and why we are not able to integrate and losing out on that opportunities. So some people also said that BIMSTEC is also partly, guided by the fact that we could not do much in SAARC. So maybe this can be another forum where we're trying regional integration. So both economic and political motivations have been there in the formation and running with BIMSTEC. And then, the approach to regionalization that we have been following. As I said, we started as a functional cooperation. When we signed first, there was no talk of FTA, free trade agreement, or security issues. It was only about pure and simple cooperation. So that is functional cooperation. And functional cooperation often comes with policy coordination. Coordinate your policy. You don't really harmonize or integrate, but policy coordination. Then it can be partial integration, which is done in most of the regions so far. And then you have full-fledged integration. Full-fledged integration are very few, of course, EU is a full-fledged integration, but even some other regions often claim that their regions are more or less fully integrated. I'm not getting more into that. And then policy harmonization. So without policy harmonization, you cannot really get full-fledged integration. Harmonization is one step higher than policy coordination. Policy coordination, you just coordinate, and harmonization is you try to reform your policy so that there are not kind of conflict with policies of one country with policies of other country. So that is harmonization. And then the next stage, you go for policy integration and unified policy. If you go to Europe, you will, for many years, people talk about CAP, Common Agriculture Policy. Now, that's also a kind of issue of huge debate, that CAP is something that have been frowned upon by other countries, but CAP has been there. So that is an example of unified policy. Similarly, you have one unified trade policy. They also have one unified competition policy. So they have many unified policy, but wherever they have not been able to get unified policy, they definitely have policies which are pretty integrated. This is, regions do when it is full-fledged integration. First two approaches are often considered old regionalism, and the rest are considered new regionalism. So old regionalism is, in the sense, earlier you would kind of get into some collective action on limited agenda, limited coordination, limited cooperation. But now we are always going for deeper cooperation. So that's why it is a kind of, the concept is called new regionalism. The last 2 or 3 are possible only with creation of supranational authority. This is the ultimate form of policy integration, when you create a supranational authority, which has many lawmaking and executive as well as judicial power, at a supranational level. This is a unique case so far, sui generis, if you want to say, because no other regional entity as of now has a supranational authority. Only EU has, right? But as I said, regions can also move up gradually. You started as a, this I have already discussed, so I'm not getting into details. But it's a dynamic process. You start with something, you end up getting something else. Now, briefly, I will kind of examine the purposes that were the declared objectives of getting into BIMSTEC. To create an enabling environment for rapid economic development, specific cooperation projects. This is why I am calling it functional cooperation. Specific cooperation projects. It's not a across the board cooperation. It's very specific cooperation projects, right? Number 2, joint endeavors in a spirit of equality and partnership. Again, it's a very, very limited scope, confirming the first purpose. Then third is to promote active collaboration and mutual assistance. It's a kind of reiteration of what you have already said in your first and second purpose. And it will involve technical, social, economic, social, technical, and scientific fields. Mind, it doesn't talk about security and political arena, right? So economic, social, technical, and scientific. Then to provide assistance to each other, So these are, we are kind of rehashing, they come from the earlier purposes. To cooperate more effectively in joint efforts that are supportive of and complementary to national development plans of the member states. So we'll do all these things as complementary to national development plans, which is very, very difficult. As I said, that there will come some issues where you will find some sort of disharmony, some sort of conflict with domestic plans, but the effort would be made to complement rather than substitute. Cooperate in projects, maintain peace and stability. So this is where first time you see you are talking about political and security issues through close collaboration. To maintain close and beneficial cooperation with existing international regional organizations. So it's very clear that whatever existing cooperation commitment these countries have made, this particular initiative is to complement, and not to substitute. To endeavor to eradicate poverty, this is again kind of reiteration of what we did in the first 1 or 2 purposes. To establish multi-dimensional connectivity, this has been very important part of BIMSTEC objective from the very beginning. That this region, it was also discussed, this region is possibly the least connected with each other, so connectivity would get important. And last but not the least, to promote trade and investment as a major contributing factor. It has been mentioned earlier also, but it is being reiterated again as promotion of trade and investment. And if you look at the principles of sovereign equality, it is reiterated in most agreements, even though there will be some compromise on sovereignty, but it is still reiterated. And it will be complementary to and not be a substitute for bilateral regional multilateral cooperation. It is again reiteration of what already has been said in the purposes. So these are from BIMSTEC agreed documents. Now, if we talk about BIMSTEC ambition, which I mentioned in the very beginning, from the purposes and principles agreed, BIMSTEC was designed to be formed to be a form of functional cooperation. I'm emphasizing again and again. No mention of terms like regional integration or economic integration anywhere in purpose, says, or in agreements or in principles. So ambition is low. So in foreseeable future, we are not even thinking of creating a supranational authority. That's out of question given the current framework, right? So yet after 7 years, when the number of members also reached 7, incidentally 7 plus 7, a framework agreement on BIMSTEC free trade area was signed, So it was not anticipated, not planned, yet NFT was signed. Now why? It could be like due to rather, in today's world, imagining a regional cooperation without a FTA, an FTA has become difficult. So essentially, either we had dearth of ideas how to promote deeper and broader cooperation, or we wanted to join the bandwagon and wave of regionalism. And of course, it could be also due to frustration with SAARC that many analysts have already mentioned. However, not much progress has been there in this direction. To give an example, that FTA ambition or commitment itself, themselves are very, very low. Limited number of goods, only tariff. But we know in today's world, tariff is hardly an issue, despite the fact that we have seen some rise of protectionism in the post-COVID world. Yet, I would say that tariff is still a limited concern compared to the non-tariff barriers which are affecting trade everywhere, whether in the context of global or whether in the context of region. So, though it was signed in 2004, so FTA has been signed 20 years. In 20 years, we have not progressed much in getting deeper economic integration or trade integration. So that's a fact. Now, power dynamics in regionalism. Because of the very nature of online discussion, it's not easy to make it interactive. But I have put a picture of elephant raising its trunk and raising one front leg. If may I ask, what is the elephant doing? Surit, if you kind of unmute the participants for some time, and if I get response, what is the elephant doing?
Elephant is dancing, Nityada.
Dancing. What else?
Anyone from the participants can guess?
So maybe performing in a circus.
So what the elephant, if you have seen circus, what would be this pose? What the elephant is trying to do?
Is it trying to give us a salute?
Pardon?
Elephant is excited now. He seems like excited. He's dancing, what Salim Rehan sir said.
Dancing. Okay, any other
Someone
answer?
is saying that it's a salute, and Sudarshan Gautam saying maybe the elephant is kicking. Siratul Mustaqim saying whether it's a salute. So many
Who
options.
said this?
Which one, salute or kicking?
Oh, that's Professor Salim saying it is saluting.
No, I said whether the elephant is dancing. I said at the beginning.
Okay, no, somebody said saluting.
Salute is Siratul Mustaqim, he said.
Okay,
whether
okay.
it's a salute.
Okay, now, as I said, when the elephant is dancing, and suppose you are a small creature, standing near the one front leg which has been raised, you are just standing near the small creature. You can be human being or other small creature. Then what would be your perception to the salute of the elephant? Okay, you might think that you will be trampled by the elephant's leg. You will be scared. Right?
Right. I think someone is already saying that Mr. Joynal Abidin, it seems to be terrifying something, trying to dominate over. Is it something you were talking?
Yeah. So what I am saying is that even if the elephant is trying to salute you, you will be scared that, you know, I will die if the feet of the raised leg of that elephant just falls on me intentionally or even accidentally. Right? This is what happens in a regional setup. If a dominant power is trying to kind of, get cozy with you, or, you might think that, this can be dangerous for you. So this is a problem of all regional bodies where you have one dominant power. And that's the problem that we faced in SARC. Now, if there are more than one dominant power, then they will possibly counterbalance each other.
Nituda, are you, there'll be any kind of, I'm sorry, I could not restrict myself to ask this question. I was a bit tempted.
Yes.
But would then the other question be that whether the elephant can be a little bit more sensible in, stepping, whether that question is there?
Exactly. Yes, those are important. The elephant has to be sensible, but it is also about perception, which may not be real. So all those will come. So one is that the elephant has to be sensible. You have to know that elephant is trained enough. The elephant is not wild, of course. And even if the elephant is trained enough, your perception whether the elephant is trained enough, tamed enough, or it is wild, that is an issue. So, but if there are, so this is a kind of, you can say it's a kind of allegory. But what I'm trying to say is that the dominant power in a region can always create problems. Whether the problems are real, genuine, or whether the problems are perceived, and maybe perceptions can also occur due to some past experience reality. Those are all issues. I'm not getting into further details, but these are issues. So now look at the kind of dominance you have in BIMSTEC region. India is 75.6% of GDP, of the share is 65.6% of all 7 countries together. Exports 64%, imports 65%, military expenditure 85%. There is no question that it is a dominant power. From economic, from security, all possible angle. Then next come Thailand. Its GDP is not very high, 11%, but its exports are 28% and imports are 25%. So one can at most say this is quasi-dominant, because even though the GDP is not very high, because in international context, share in trade is also something that is important. You might be very big in GDP, but your domestic consumption is so high that you're not able to export much, which is the case with India. So GDP might be high, but per capita income wise, India doesn't have the highest per capita income, even in this region. So to that extent, it also reduces your power. Then comes Bangladesh, which is 9.3% in GDP, export 5%, import 6%, military expenditure 5%. This can be in this particular context, and these terms are often used in global geopolitics. But in global geopolitics, Bangladesh will be a very small player, fringe player. But here, in regional geopolitics, you can say Bangladesh is a middle power or a swing state. That's the term that is being used these days, a swing state. Okay. Now, Bhutan is, of course, the least controversial because it's a very peaceful country. It doesn't get into any controversial discussion with any country. So that way, Bhutan can also play an important role because of this image it has got. When Bhutan says something, possibly a lot of times ice can be broken because it's a peacemaking in that sense. Rest are in same category. Nepal, Myanmar, Sri Lanka. They are slightly less than middle power or swing power, but they have issues with each other. So those are also often problematic. Like SAARC, I said India, Bangladesh had some issues. In BIMSTEC, of course, Bangladesh, Myanmar have some issues that are unsettled. And of course, India, Bangladesh also have issues which also not fully settled. So those issues would be there, but it's how difficult and how simple those issues are another thing. But we have seen in some regions they have issues, and yet they can keep aside those particular issues in particular contexts and move ahead. So hopefully we can also move ahead in keeping aside those issues. So as I said, perception is also very important, and that can, if you look at EU, for example, France and Germany, they have been dominant powers. So because there are two dominant powers, the smaller countries would draw some comfort from that, if they keep on discussing important issues, then, it's not a single dominance. In ASEAN, of course, to start with, there was dominance of Indonesia and Thailand. To some extent, Malaysia also. And now even Singapore has come up economically. So it is also pretty dominant in ASEAN architecture. So if you have multiple dominant powers, you have less of a political problem. In SAARC, as I said, single dominant power caused problems. But mostly it was also because India and Pakistan could not come to terms on some long-term political issues, and we could not keep those issues aside in our discussion in SAARC. So these are and then also perception. Myanmar and Thailand, being not part of South Asian geopolitics, they probably would not have problematic perception about the dominant power that is India. So they would not have much discomfort. But at the same time, they also, maybe less interested. First, they are part of ASEAN. That gives them the comfort that they are not isolated. They are integrated with a very, dynamic and very effective regional cooperation regime. And now ASEAN has got into RCEP. So they have their own comfort there. So they might show relatively less interest compared to countries of South Asian region who are kind of nowhere in terms of regional cooperation. So they have much more appetite in terms of, moving forward. Here I would say much will depend on India and Bangladesh. India dominant and Bangladesh a swing state, which also has got a leadership status by virtue of leading the trade and investment, sector, as well as hosting the secretariat. So Bangladesh can leverage its strength on that. So the movement of this BIMSTEC will largely depend on how India and Bangladesh they agree and they try to move ahead. You agree, but you don't show much interest. That then is not taking you anywhere. So if India, Bangladesh, they come together and they decide, no, we have to do it, maybe Myanmar and Thailand, even they may not be much enthusiastic, they will say, okay, if you are comfortable, we will join you, move ahead. So this can happen. Then there is another angle which can be elephant in the room, which should not be ignored totally, that India is a regional dominant power, but it is not a global dominant power, right? Now, the hard reality of this world is that you talk about any region, the global dominant power, they're also very active, and they also influence what all countries are doing. And when I say all countries are doing, it is not just, they will influence only the smaller countries. They can influence even the regional dominant power, by which I mean India. Even India can be influenced by global power of what India is trying to do here. So global dominant power is, of course, it is US. If you talk about, if you take collective power, then Europe, of course, is a global dominant power. And of course, rising China, which is more than a regional power. And now everybody accept that China is a global dominant power. So what they think and how they influence these countries, including India, can have a role in what these countries collectively try to do, and it can facilitate and it can even complicate the situation, depending on how overall things play out. BIMSTEC has centers and think tanks. BIMSTEC Energy Center, which has been established in Bangalore just last year, but it's almost only on paper, not much of activity. BIMSTEC Center for Weather and Climate, which is in city of Noida, which is a kind of satellite city of Delhi, established again in 2023, but it has not really taken off in terms of activities. BIMSTEC Cultural Industries Observatory, Thimphu, Bhutan, it's not yet established. It has been agreed that it will be established there. BIMSTEC Technology Transfer Facility, Colombo, again, it is not established. And out of these, 4 centers, 2 are in India and 1 in Bhutan and 1 in Sri Lanka. Only 2 in India has been established. India is, of course, relatively more resource rich, so it could take a better lead in this. Bhutan, Sri Lanka, they established, so certainly they have the intention, but maybe they find it difficult to manage resources. So do we have any regional mechanism to help these countries with regional resource raising and that funding these centers? It's an important issue that also needs to be discussed. BIMSTEC's network of policy think tanks. Each of the country designated 1 think tank in each member country. Some are active, but some are not really much active. Interestingly, except the think tank designated by Bangladesh, think tanks are somehow linked to the government. Only the Bangladeshi think tank, which is CPD, Center for Policy Dialogue, which is not a government-funded think tank. So others are either fully or partly funded by government, all other think tanks. And if you go to Nepalese think tank, it is hardly kind of active. So it is also, I think, due to the resource constraints these countries have been facing. So this, to my mind, can restrict, as I said in the very beginning. I have not done a kind of audit of what, say, think tanks from other countries like India or even Bangladesh, which are relatively better resource, CPD and RIS, both are better resource, how they are trying to, address issues of smaller countries. They can do it, but that audit I have not done. So this question remains whether we have been able to create a framework where smaller countries can, especially Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar in some sense, also smaller country, Sri Lanka, they are, in a position to equitably participate. Sri Lanka, of course, their intellectual prowess is relatively good, compared to even Myanmar. So, but still, in the current situation, they might have resource constraint. Some concerns and opportunities that can be thought of. We had something called BBIN, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, a sub-regional initiative. They tried to do something. Initial progress was good, but not much progress further. One important milestone they tried to achieve was the vehicle, BBIN vehicle, free movement of vehicles agreement, but that could not be fully implemented because of some apprehension of some countries. Political buy-in low in some countries. For example, Bangladesh, there have been some opposition that this can lead to dominance of India. But it is also a reality that Bangladesh is at the center of the region. So any connectivity, you talk about the region, that connectivity discussion cannot happen without Bangladesh taking the center stage, without Bangladesh providing the essentially platform for regional connectivity, because Nepal is at the end, Bhutan is at the end, India is also, unless you include Nepal and Bhutan, is one end, Thailand is one end. So Bangladesh is at the center. So if you are talking about regional connectivity, the Bangladesh territory has to be crisscrossed. So, but if that raises concern of dominant, I think it's the responsibility of both India and Bangladesh together to address that concern, and move ahead. Okay, Bangladesh-India relation has been, I'm not getting into this because it's a very controversial, but I think that's a kind of passing phase, and I am hopeful that the current stress would be a thing of the past very soon. I see, things are improving even in the India-Bangladesh relationship, meeting between government, ambassadors and all, high commissioner and all is happening. So I think this is a very temporary phase, and some instability also, I hope, quickly end in Bangladesh. Overall, I see there is huge scope and our ambition is not too high. So given that, it will be not so difficult to make possible progress. Again, I would repeat, if India and Bangladesh, they decide to move ahead, this is a very, very important part of governance in BIMSTEC region. These two countries have to play a central role. BIMSTEC is quite unique. As I said, it doesn't have in that sense regional identity. And it started with something very different. It's not purely economic, it has security. So it is very unique. So if we think that EU is the model or ASEAN is the model, we might not possibly get the desired result. So it's a sui generis, region or regionalization effort. So similarly, approaches also have to be evolved, and these countries, they together have to develop the right approach for them. So copying from other regions might not be very useful. So with that, I will stop, and of course I would be ready to discuss with you your questions, comments, suggestions, concerns, whatever you have. This was my effort to understand governance challenges in BIMSTEC region. Now for you to decide whether it was of any value or not. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sanem colleagues, participants, Professor Selim and Surid. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful presentation. We have some questions in our chat box. I can read it out for you. One question from Avanti is that, is there any importance of chicken neck to promote the healthcare service trade between BIMSTEC countries?
Can you please repeat? I could not hear properly.
Okay, sir. Is there any importance of chicken neck to promote healthcare service trade between BIMSTEC countries?
Okay, this has already been happening. I mean, Bangladesh, between India and Bangladesh, but it is mostly one way. Lot of Bangladeshis are coming to India for treatment, but I know it is also happening between Nepal and Bhutan for a long time. Bangladesh is relatively recent, and also Sri Lanka. Also, many people from Sri Lanka are coming to seek treatment in India. But I think this is only a small part. Another part could be, which also have been happening, like Indian doctors going to Bangladesh, training them, or providing assistance to, develop good hospitals so that Bangladeshis need not come to India in such large number, So that can be another approach. And that I think would be very useful for all countries together, because after all, but this has to be, taken with very caution, because I'm saying, because this lot of these private hospitals have come up in India, but within India, there are concerns that these hospitals often are not always giving you the best possible treatment, or, often they're getting into, treatment which are not expected best from this. This I would suggest that we take up two things. Suppose a Bangladeshi comes to India and falls victim of bad treatment. What are the remedies a Bangladeshi will have? If he's within India, an Indian can go to court and all that can happen. But what will happen to a Bangladeshi getting bad treatment or whatever in India? Do we have any mechanism? Similarly, suppose an India hospital group goes to Bangladesh and establishes a hospital, and there something wrong goes. What are the remedial measures? These are issues that also need to be discussed to promote both kind of cooperation, movement of patients as well as movement of hospitals and doctors. But of course, there is huge scope. In India, we have a lot of doctors who need better employment opportunities. They are not affiliated to institutions. There are, of course, often quality concerns, but that can be also addressed. But this is, of course, an important area of cooperation that we can explore. But also think about the public health part. This is where maybe we also focus. That is one part. I was talking purely from trade and private sector profit motive oriented perspective. Now there is another perspective. Now Sri Lanka has the best, public health records, much better than India. Despite India having so many hospitals, doctors and all, Sri Lanka has the best record in terms of public health facilities. In India, some states, of course, Kerala has good record, Sikkim has good record. Now, how we promote public health from cross-border learning? There, can we think about cooperation, knowledge transfer, capacity building? This is also an important area because you're talking about cooperation. We're not talking about trade only. It's not about making money. It's also about promoting health of all countries of the region, all peoples of this region. So that is also important part. And even Nepal has, sorry, managed to move forward in terms of public health, indicators, despite it is being very poor country and very resource constrained. So there are lessons to be learned from, these countries also. Okay, next.
Thank you so much, sir. Sir, we have two questions from Mr. Shayuk Chakraborty. His first question is, how in China economic shutdown affects BIMSTEC and other Asian countries? Is high US debt falls may impact on BIMSTEC countries' trade policy?
Well, that's a kind of a bigger question. Now, as far as China is concerned, it has two-way effects. China is an important trade partner for all of these countries, and China is an important market for all of these countries. And these countries are also market for China. So when China is kind of having slower growth rate, it can have two-way impacts. One is you might do badly in terms of exports to China, at least in the short run, but it might also give you opportunities, to make your industry more competitive. Your industry, might get a kind of a bigger space, in rest of the world. Any country, when it develops, essentially something happens. That is, the cost of production goes up, wages will go up, which is happening in China. So if cost of production is going up in China, can Bangladesh, can India take advantage of that? So you have both positive and negatives, but it will depend on how these countries individually or these BIMSTEC countries collectively, by integrating their value chain, take advantage of this, China becoming relatively, I would not say China is not yet a high cost economy, but relatively high cost economy. So we have both. As far as US is concerned, US is not going to give us space in terms of less competition like China. So US, economy not doing well would always affect us only negative. So that is there, because US is a market for all countries, for China, for India, for Bangladesh. So that economy has to, the US economy good means it can be good for all of us.
Thank you, sir. So his another question was, how large country debt like United States highest debt and China's economic slowdown affects the BIMSTEC trade policies?
I think I answered that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So another question from Mr. Jivnath Odhikari is that, which countries are more responsible for the slow pace of integration of the BIMSTEC region? In what respect countries are responsible for the sluggishness? How can we move forward from the deeper integration of the BIMSTEC region?
Can you repeat? It's a very long question, so I cannot.
Okay, sir. So that's the first part is, which countries are more responsible for the slow pace of integration in the BIMSTEC region? In what respect the countries are responsible for the sluggishness?
I think I tried to say that, India and Bangladesh, they have to take the lead. And if integration is not happening, you can say all are equally responsible, but I would say, the natural leaders, they did not play the role of natural leaders properly. So, slightly bigger blame would go to the natural leaders. Okay, what is the second part?
The second part was, how can we move forward to make deeper integration of the region?
Yes, again, I said, the three countries that will play a role is India, Bangladesh, and Thailand. There is no second opinion of that. Within these three countries, Bangladesh and India, and within Bangladesh, India has to play a bigger role. But Bangladesh is led, the leader, natural leader, being the secretariat. So it has to kind of keep on telling India, let's move, let's move. So this is how it will possibly move.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we have seen that Mr. Nahid Sattar has raised his hand. So I will request Mr. Nahid Sattar to ask Sir directly.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Can you hear my audio?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I have more of a comment than a question. I would say it's like my understanding is that the European Union it has its own problems, but it exists as a group, as a union. One of the reasons might be that it has some certain common shared values in terms of like democracy, like governance, human rights, the role of a citizen. Across the European Union, there is some commonality in these areas. I see that one of the challenges in the BIMSTEC region is, I think, of course, all the states have their own issues, but there is less of this commonality across the states, like the state of human rights, democracy, and the role of a citizen in these countries. So, do you think that would be more of a challenge for further integration or cooperation among these countries?
You see, it is true that EU has more communities in these countries, to the extent that in all the European countries, death penalty is banned, right? But if you look at him from other perspective, all of them have, they talk about shared values like democracy and whatever. We also talk about democracies, except, in case of Myanmar, where you have, junta coming and democracy coming, we still having, or in Thailand, there have been some issues. But, at least constitutionally, all of us also accept democracy as the principle of governance. So that way, we also have this commonality, except this aberration. And then we always hear complaints about democracy being not so perfect, and that is for all countries, so nowhere, maybe India is slightly better, that we always had elections after 5 years and without any fail, that kind of stuff. But more or less, whether you perfectly follow what you say or not, we try to say that we are all accepting democracy as a principle. Now, common identity, as I said, would not have all of them take together. They say we are all Europeans. Here we are saying some are South Asians, some are Southeast Asians, so that identity problem is there. But then not having, perfect human rights regime is also a kind of commonality. So, when, say, for example, when other countries say, the Europeans or the Americans would say to India or to Bangladesh, why are you engaging with them? They don't value human rights so much. We said, fine, we understand that, but we can still do business. So these allegations about human rights not being strictly adhered to is like the allegation is there for all these countries, including India, right? So we have commonality in that way. So that way, we might say, no, that is something we can keep aside and we can move forward with other economic and social agenda. Thirdly, I would say EU has problems also because it has integrated, exceedingly, same money, common money and all that, sorry, currency. So we are not even thinking of that much. So to that extent, our problems would be much less. We are not thinking about common central bank, common, common visa regime, or, current problem in Europe is like so many migrants, coming from other countries, and what do we do with that? On those things, we are roughly on the same page, all these BIMSTEC countries, so those problems are not going to affect us. So, Europeans have problems because they integrated too deep. We're not even thinking of getting too deep. So to that extent, our problems would be less. And I don't think we would have as much problem as Europe is facing today.
Thank you, sir. Sir, a question from Choning Dorji is that can the BIMSTEC nation pursue a harmonized standard or enter into a mutual recognition of agreement to increase the flow of trade among the member countries?
Certainly, see, I talked about tariff and non-tariff barriers, right? And we already have harmonized standards, in South Asian context. We have SARSO, which is incidentally located in Bangladesh, which has not been a great success. I think largely because SARC itself has not been a good success. I think if we could not make SARSO operational, we can think of harmonizing standards within BIMSTEC. But we have to keep in mind, Myanmar and Thailand, they are part of ASEAN, so they have, apart from global standards, WTO and all, they have additional standards. We other countries, South Asian countries, since SARSO has not been a great success, would not have. So we have to keep that into consideration, that when we talk about standards for BIMSTEC region, yes, if we cannot get that standards and mutual recognition agreement thrashed out, I think getting higher trade integration is not going to happen. So that's not just a possibility, but that's a kind of matter of compulsion, or to get this region more integrated.
Thank you, sir. Sir, a question from Mr. Ikramul Hassan is that how may we bring huge hydro potential of Nepal and Bhutan into reality and export electricity to neighboring BIMSTEC countries such as Bangladesh and India? What are the challenges restraining from taking this initiative?
Well, this has been a long-term demand, and there has been agreement of doing that. But two things happen. Now, earlier there was a case where whether Nepal and Bhutan can export electricity to Bangladesh or other countries, or even Myanmar can export to Bangladesh and India, because Myanmar also has huge potential, which remain underutilized. So now, at least in South Asian context, or even in BBIN framework, India has agreed for transmission, that Nepal and Bhutan can transmit to Bangladesh. Same thing has not happened for Myanmar to other countries, so that can also be discussed. But there is one problem, that as of now, the infrastructure is not there. Then ADB, for example, agreed to provide finance, but still the progress has not been pretty fast. But I think if we can develop the infrastructure, transmission lines, then it is possible. So we need to first two things. These countries who have potential, there has to be more power plants first, installed, then transmission, then things will fall in place. But we have been slow in everything. Even if we agree, we don't move fast enough. So this has been a problem, but this should be done, and this can be done.
Thank you, sir. Another question from Miss Afia Mubashira Tiasha. how can governance framework within BIMSTEC facilitate better economic cooperation and the trade among the member states?
It has not happened. I think that was the key message of my presentation. It has not happened that to the extent it could have happened.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the question from Mr. Mushfiqur Salehin is that what role does BIMSTEC play in regional security governance and how can it respond to emerging security challenges?
Well, this question I would rather not venture to answer because security is a very complex subject, and my own understanding of that is very limited. I am basically an economist, but economics cannot be divided of politics and security. So to that extent, I have very basic understanding. But this needs deeper understanding, and I do not really have that much of knowledge in this area.
Sir, we have addressed all the questions in the chat box. I would like to request the audience, if you have any more questions, you can ask, use the raise hand option and ask sir directly.
I think we don't have any further question for Dr. Nityananda. But we sincerely thank you. I think it has been extremely useful session, Nityananda. I enjoyed quite a lot, and some of the issues you mentioned, these are very close to our hearts. You know that how much time we actually spend together in discussing these issues at both at the South Asia level and now more on the BIMSTEC level too. So yes, I think from our side, from SANEM, it's a sincere thanks to you, and we look forward to engaging further with you. And I also thank the participants for making some very important questions. So
Thank
Nikhil,
you.
if you have
Thank
any kind of final words,
Salim,
closing words.
it was pleasure on my part, and we haven't met for some time, in person, but seeing your face is always, gives me pleasure, and hopefully we are meeting in December.
Hopefully, yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So with this, I think we can close our session today, and I invite the participants to join the last session, last two sessions on Wednesday, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, on 25th. So thank you so much. Thank you once again. Thank you, Shurit. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.